All right, welcome everyone. This is a public meeting of the West Bend School District and School Board Curriculum Committee. It is 4:30 p.m. on January 6th of 2026, and we will start with introductions. My name is Melanie Ergott, School Board Member.
June Kruger, School Board Member.
Kelly Downs, Director of Curriculum and Instruction.
Tina Van Roo, District Data and Assessment Coordinator.
Adrienne Schneider, Program Administrator.
Erin Faust, Curriculum Coordinator.
All right. The first item we have up for discussion today is the Quarter 3 book clubs, and that was prepared by Adrienne Schneider.
Yeah, and just as shared in the materials for you tonight, there are no requests for additions for Quarter 3. Everything remains as it has been, with just minor changes to things that have either already been approved or just changing the order of some things just to make more sense for the curricular design for the teachers. So 7th grade is adding a book, but it has been previously approved and was used during Quarter 1 in the past. So nothing really to report there beyond the norm.
All right. Anybody have any questions on that? No? All right. All right. Thank you for updating on that. The next item we have up for discussion is Math Implementation Year 1 Update, and that will be presented by Kelly Downs, our Director of Curriculum and Instruction.
Well, thank you for having us tonight. We are excited to come before you and tell you a little bit about how our math implementation is going for the new resource of illustrative math in grades 6 through 10. Kurt Marquardt is our instructional coach who has been extremely instrumental in helping with not only the resource selection, but supporting teachers and coaching and in doing this implementation process. So he's here to share with us as well today. Today we have a few things we want to tell you about. We're first just going to review what do we put in place, and then we want to talk to you about what we've done to support our teachers with implementation. Implementing any new program is a very, very heavy lift. It comes with a lot of stress, a lot of experienced teachers feel like brand new teachers again. There's a lot that goes into it. So we did design a lot of supports to ease the process. We're going to talk to you a little bit about our progress from a student lens, a teacher lens, and we have a couple surveys to share with you, the data from that. And then we'll talk to you a little bit about what our next steps will be. So to review, we adopted illustrative math. Remember that our middle school liked one platform different from the high school, 2 different platforms, exact same curriculum overall. It's still illustrative math. So Kendall Hunt is at the high school for illustrative math with Algebra 1 and Geometry. We use Imagine Learning at Badger and Silverbrook. And Algebra 2 will implement illustrative math next year. And as a reminder, the reason for that is to, again, teachers were already doing several of those teachers teach both Algebra and Algebra 2, or Geometry and Algebra 2. So it's just kind of to ease our way into it. Next year they'll pick that up and add on.
That also helped with the students transitioning from
That
their
too.
resource 2. They had Algebra and Geometry in the old resource. It'd be a little change for them to get to Algebra 2. They had actually since 6th grade.
Yeah.
So it was a little bit easier for them.
Yeah, that would have been a much bigger shift.
So next thing, this is kind of some of the supports we did during the summer. One of the benefits of actually having 2 different platforms is we could schedule 2 different people at the same time. So we could have illustrative math come in and Kendall Hunt come in at the same time and not have to worry about that, so that was nice. But you can see this is where in the summer we had them come in to train us kind of on the platform, some of those resources, how to use that. And then we also had a couple days with Sarah Brown, who was our outside consultant, on the actual, I want to say how to implement resources, but kind of the curriculum and what we're actually doing. So she came in and did that during the summer.
One of the advantages of, we had contracted with Sarah Brown for the past couple of years now for coaching support, but she is also a certified illustrative math trainer. So when we had to do this training, we didn't have to get a separate consultant. We could use somebody we already had.
And the teachers already knew.
And the teachers already knew, had relationships with, so that was a nice advantage.
And then we also, because this is new for administrators, and they were familiar with our old curriculum, we brought in, again, Sarah to lead the administrators through, hey, this is kind of what the new curriculum is going to look like. These are how you can support teachers in implementing new curriculum, and when you're going in to evaluate them, some of the things you could look for to help them do it with integrity. So that was just for the administrators.
The other key thing I want to point out to you is that we developed a walkthrough tool for them just for our year's goals for implementation. So that will look different as we go on, but we determined that this year we want our teachers just focusing on getting the components of the lesson put in place. That doesn't sound like a lot, but it is a tremendous shift. So
Yeah, when
that
Kelly
too-
talks about looking like a first-year teacher, veteran teachers are like, I feel like a first-year teacher again, just because it's new and different. The math is the same for the most part, some different representations, we'll talk about that, but it just takes a little bit to get it all in.
And so this tool is focused on those components for administrators to use as they give feedback to teachers, so they know what the goals are, all in alignment.
It would be nice if the summer training's all we needed, but we don't, because there's new units, new chapters, new delivery methods, how they do things. So this is just kind of a quick overview of what the teachers have gone through during the year. So if you just focus on like one column, we'll look at sixth grade. Each unit, they had the dark days or days where they actually had release days from their classroom, that they had a full day of training. We'll talk more about what that looked like. The days that are light in white are days where, are PD days where we had 3 hours of training for the new resources, kind of focusing each one on a unit to give them a preview of that unit.
I will also say shout out to the district in supporting this because many districts, when they do a new curriculum, might just do August days and say, go do. That is a very difficult position to put teachers in. So I'm very pleased that the school board supported this type of a plan so that we could support teachers throughout the school year.
So we just wanted to give you an overview of what those days kind of looked like. So you have an idea, well, what the heck are they doing for a full day or even for 3 hours? So all the days start out with our professional learning days, kind of an overview of the unit. Really, this is just kind of familiarizing yourself with what we call the story of the unit. Get an idea, how are the progressions of the math told in that unit? Because it might be different from what they looked at before. They might have, like, the teachers will question, well, why am I teaching this before I used to teach this first? This first overview just kind of tells them, you know, the reason why and the progression behind that. And they were this first part is really just getting that overview and just getting, like, just kind of like, think of reading the back of a book. Like, it's just kind of telling you that first unit. What's this section about? Again, that would be for unit. We'll go to the next one. This is the next part in those days is where we spend the vast majority of our time. It's really unpacking, and we say the learning goals, but you're really looking at those lessons. We're taking a deep dive into the sections and the activities. We go through it, we model lessons with them, so we actually go through lessons, say this is what the kids would experience, so the teachers can see it. And the reason we do that is because some of the strategies they're using are new, and so are the representations. So, you know, math is, we look at different, there's better representations for the conceptual understanding. So teachers may have seen them, may not have seen them before, because each resource kind of uses a different representation. So we take some time to look at that. And I would say that is, I mean, we spend the vast majority of our time doing that and trying to get the teachers comfortable with these new representations or strategies and looking at how these lessons are being taught.
And just, we had made already a lot of those shifts when we did CPN. But just to give you an idea what we're talking about here with conceptual understanding, there's the procedure of math. Do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? And we memorize those or learn how to do them. The conceptual understanding is what's actually happening, the why behind this. Like, why do you put a 0 down when you multiply double digits? Those types of things. And representative models and things like that. Like the why and what's actually, what abstract concept are we representing with numbers?
They'd say we actually had one with sixth grade, and it was addition and subtraction. And, you know, we're all used to the standard algorithm where you're borrowing from one when you're subtracting. They spend a lot of time building up to why you're borrowing, what you're actually doing in that. And we eventually get to the standard algorithm because that's where we want the kids to be, but we want them to understand why they're doing it and how that all comes into play. But that's where we take a lot of our time. No, you can move on. Again, then we go through with them the end of unit assessment. So again, we looked at, okay, this is what's being taught. Okay, this is the goal you're trying to get with them. So now when you're looking at your planning, you can really see what lessons they need to focus on, where the main ideas when this assessment comes up, so we know how they're being assessed and those major learning goals that they want to accomplish. We also then, part of that, we take a little bit of time to look at prior grade level knowledge, so where they come from. So like in sixth grade, we look at fifth grade. Okay, what did they come in from fifth grade? Where are the representations used in fifth grade? And how does that play into how we look at sixth grade? And then we do the exact opposite. We look at, okay, in sixth grade, where is this going? So sometimes that might be seventh grade, sometimes it might be a unit coming up in sixth grade, sometimes it might be eighth grade, depending on what the concept is, but where is this going and what do they need to know to make sure they're successful in the years ahead? That's kind of, and that is the vast majority of the time that the teachers have spent learning. That can varies. Whatever time we have after that, in that day, we kind of give the teachers time now, okay, now you can use this knowledge and plan your units out. So this is a time where they do collaborative planning with some guidance to look at, okay, how are we going to actually lay these out? What are some things we need to focus on? What other representations or what other maybe lessons we want to look at closer so we have a better idea what's going on.
That also is a key component of getting to our guaranteed viable curriculum. So that no matter what classroom a child is in, we know they're going to be receiving the same quality education. And that's that alignment of the teachers coming together to do that together.
And so also with this implementation support, we have coaching. So we actually, the structure of this is every teacher. So with the 6-10 math teachers, I think we have 22 teachers altogether. Every teacher has 3 individual coaching sessions throughout the year. And what that entails is they meet with a coach, they have a pre-planning session. They have some kind of in-classroom, either modeling, co-teaching, or an observation, kind of what depends on what the teacher needs. And then a post-debriefing reflection. So you can see the little picture in the corner, I include that one. That's one of our, Eric Cantors. He's one of our coaches from the Math Institute. His expertise is 6th to 8th grade math. He is phenomenal in that. And he's modeling a lesson in a classroom right now, or not right now, in that picture.
He's fabulous at K-5 too.
Yeah. In the lower grade level, he does an awesome job. And some of the benefits of coaching that we have up there, it's really that individualized. We have this time together where we kind of do that big idea of this is how the lesson goes out, this is what you can do. But teachers leave and they still have questions. They still, how am I actually going to do this in my classroom? And this is where they get those specific actionable things in their classroom. I have this kid. How do I actually work with this kid? Or I have this group that I just can't connect with. What are some strategies I can use? And this is where they can get that individualized professional development. And underneath, I have the real-time, in-the-moment feedback. How Kelly and I were talking about that. Kelly, well, is that the same? Is it different? So the real time is like when I've been in classrooms with teachers working, we're teaching maybe 3 lessons together and we do a lesson, then right after it, we're meeting, we're talking about how are we going to change this for the next section? So it's that real time changing stuff, how you can tweak a lesson right in the middle of it or for the next period and improve that lesson. So it's some of that. It's just giving those teachers that time to reflect, which actually goes back to, well, not back to, one of our other bullet points with developing that growth mindset. That we're just keeping them like, hey, we all are improving, we all can get better. It doesn't matter who we are, how long we've been teaching, we all can learn from each other. Because there are times where I'll lead a lesson too for someone, then they critique me. Like, oh yeah, we could have did that better. And again, we're just learning together. And that last part increases confidence in the lesson. So it's really our goal is to get them, as Kelly said, to make sure that we're implementing the resource as intended and we're confident in all those components because it takes time. And we had some of our teachers that are very hard on themselves. Like, I think it was the first week, I can't get all this stuff in. Like, you've been doing it for 5 days. Give yourself some grace there. Come on, it's okay. And some of them are doing much better. Sorry, gotta read what it was. Oh, sorry, PLCs. I forgot. So we also, one of the big parts about this was looking at PLCs. So for PLCs, I'm assuming you're familiar with the PLCs, the terms of PLCs, where the teacher, kind of the teachers, I don't want to say playing time.
Do you want me to jump in?
Sure.
It stands for Professional Learning Community. And what this really is, it is the engine that drives learning. When you want to take, average learning in district up a notch, this is what you need in place. And it focuses around 4 questions. Being super targeted about what do we need to learn? What do they have to learn? What are we going to do if they don't learn it? Because we know no matter what we do, we could be perfect and we're going to have students who didn't get it the first time. So what are we going to do with them when they don't understand what we're trying to teach them? And then what about the kids who had it, but when they even came in? We make a plan for that. We know that up front, so we plan that. And then finally, why is it escaping me? Final question.
What do they do if they know it? What do
We
they
did
do if
that.
they don't know it? Sorry. I was looking at
Oh, how will we know? if they
how,
vote? Goodness.
assessment.
Assessment, goodness. So we plan all that out in the PLC community. And this is where they're looking at those questions, which strengthens their planning and allows them to be incredibly intentional about everything that they do.
And so one of the big things we wanted to make sure we did, and this is the second year of doing this, first year with this resource, is we wanted to make sure those are teacher-led, because it's much more effective if it's teachers driving this discussion, having it. But to do that, we had to train some people, making sure that they're comfortable leading, they want to lead, and they kind of know what the expectations are. So in the summer, again, we had a group of teachers that volunteered to do this. We trained them on how to be some PLC leaders and facilitate that discussion. And they are now leading the PLCs.
Yeah.
And then with support from, I attend every math PLC. We didn't have this on here, and I thought of it as we were coming down. I do want to make sure the principals at these places also are very supportive of these PLCs, and they're attending every one that they possibly can. So they do a great job of supporting it. But we try checking with them, help them set the agenda, work through any problems that they have, just talking through like, what do we do? What should we be talking about? Really offering that, again, just in time, I want to say intervention or support for them, because sometimes they have questions about how do you, sometimes they're math questions, sometimes they're how do we work with a teacher that might be not wanting to do something, just running those meetings with your peers, because sometimes that's very difficult. But
And when we think about a PLC, it's different from like a regular meeting. So we're all in the process of getting that idea in our head about what makes this distinct from just meeting together or just planning together. It's a little bit more than that. So Kurt's support and Sarah's support at the PLCs is all of that with the unit, the implementation support, but it's also in supporting how do we do a proper PLC so that we can make that the most effective. And there's a whole continuum of moving towards what a PLC should look like, and we're all at different places in that. So it was really important to have somebody there guiding that. Okay. Did you do the benefits?
Yep.
Okay. We also took some time with our administrators to do a walkthrough with them, partnering with them, so they could know what does an IM lesson look like. So we did the training in the summer, but that's different from actually experiencing it, which is a little tricky ask when our teachers are brand new to this, and then we're saying, we want you to see what it looks like. So in order to do this, we went to Silverbrook because they have a wonderful amount of time to do the math. So we knew we could see it as it's supposed to be done. Badger has a very short amount of time, so we're having to make lots of adjustments to do it properly, and same with the high school. So we went to Silverbrook and we brought Patrick O'Connor and Dave Ullman to see a classroom. And they observed the whole time, took notes. We showed them the walkthrough tool and how to respond with that. But these are some of the things that they came away with, that time for the proper amount of time allowed for what we call a launch, which is warming up the kids to get them ready for the learning. And that launch that made a huge impact, because that's sometimes the stuff we go real fast through when we don't have enough time. And they saw that impact on the student learning, like how their concepts were being formed. They saw an increase in student engagement. And I would say that has been kind of a theme across even our site visits when we go in and see the engagements of students doing math has increased. They saw the structure of the lesson aligned to the resource, so they were seeing the components we're looking for. The activity and lesson synthesis provided clarity. So in this resource, after every activity, the teacher's bringing them back together using student work to make the point super clear. And teacher clarity is a really important instructional strategy. So that helps them, and then at the end of every lesson, they do the same thing. This is what you should have learned today. There's a clear learning goal, an intentional math community, and this is something we are working really hard at. It's really important to develop a math community where it's safe to take those risks of learning and making mistakes, because that's how you learn in math, right? And we are really being intentional with fostering that. In the classroom that we went in, she did this at an exceptionally high level, so that was wonderful.
And the resource we adopted actually has that as
Yes.
part of the curriculum. It reminds you to do that, gives you some strategies to do that, build that community. We'll talk a little bit more about that later. So then we're going to want to talk a little bit about our progress. So these next kind of quotes. I want to call them quotes. They're not really
They
quotes,
essentially are.
but they're essentially quotes. One of the first things we start out when we do our training days with the teachers is, hey, what are some celebrations and what are some challenges? So these are, like, I want to call them a summary of some of those
We-
celebrations and
Yeah, we
challenges.
took them and put them and got themes. So we've organized them by the themes that the teachers were telling us,
Yep.
and then pulled out some representative
So
samples.
they're not universal, but this is some of the stuff we saw, some of the themes, so.
So you can see again, students being more engaged, participating more often, they're attempting harder problems. That made my day, because oftentimes grit is so important, right? And being able to persevere, especially in math, but everywhere. So that was great, and they're beginning to see connections. I love that one as well. Years ago, when I implemented this somewhere else, I remember talking to a student, she's like, I didn't know all this was connected. Like, this was so interesting to her. And I love that IM does that. It really does show you how all the math is interrelated. And then instructional routines and structure, they were getting more comfortable with the routine of it, which is great. They're getting comfort with that lesson flow, growing. I expect it to take the entirety of the year before they really feel like, okay, I think I have a grip on this. Hopefully better now, every day. And then the cool downs are that formative assessment, but this is huge. The formative data are increasingly used to adjust instruction. The formative data, that's the, did you get it today? Again, those PLC questions, how do we know that you learned it? I taught you something today, this is my goal, did you get there? That formative data is there for us to be able to adjust the instruction in, again, real time.
And some of the other ones that we're seeing are just the trust in the curriculum. It's a new resource. When we were looking at some of these, we described it as, because some of them were very attached to our old resource, we described it as kind of like breaking up with your college boyfriend or girlfriend. Because some of them really had some of that emotional baggage on with this. So they're coming into it. I just talked to them yesterday. He's like, oh, this last one really good. I really like that. And I was just like, yes, they're getting into it. They're trusting it. So. And again, the lessons feel more intuitive and student-centered. I think the teachers are they're feeling the flow. Like I said, they're not worried as much about the day-to-day. They're getting that part down. So that's coming along.
I also want to point out that they appreciate not having to create materials. This is a shout out to Ashley, our administrative assistant. So when we do this curriculum, there are card sorts that all have to be copied and cut and laminated. And I didn't want teachers having to worry about doing that. I wanted them to worry about getting into the curriculum and teaching students and responding. So Ashley has stepped up and has been doing a lot of that work for these teams. And they appreciated it, so.
Yeah, and when we look at the PLCs, again, the PLCs are stronger this year than I've seen them in many years. Just the work they're doing in collaboration. And we have that honest instructional conversations. That all stems from it being teacher-led and teacher-driven. They're not going to have those honest conversations if a principal's leading it. They just don't feel, nothing as principals, you just don't feel safe sometimes. And even the principal's sitting right there. But with a teacher leading it, they're just more honest with each other. They're like, yeah, I'm struggling with this. I need some help on this. They just have those honest conversations. So it's really nice to see.
And they're really they're valuing that coaching, which I'm really happy to see.
And some of the challenges, again, not all these are universal. These are some themes that we pulled out from them. But again, it's not all roses, and it's definitely, there's challenges. So again, we started out with the pacing. It's a challenge. It's a new resource. It's different. It's meant to be in 45 minutes to 50 minutes. And that's what we have in the classroom. That means if you shut the door and teach, as soon as the bell rings, you're going. And that's what every resource is. It's difficult to get anything in that time.
And then, of course, it's just balancing the workload. They're
Yeah.
working on that. When we look at student readiness and independence, part of it is why we're doing a new one, right? We have gaps in prior knowledge. So we're looking at what can we do to make sure kids have ownership of that. And they're struggling with independence and perseverance. Some are doing great, some are not. We're working on that as a whole. Homework completion, inconsistent, so we're working with that. And sometimes they hesitate to attempt problems on their own.
And I'll gotta say, a lot of those problems are not anything to do with the resource.
Yeah.
They're just universal problems that every school has, and we're always trying to get better at.
Yeah. Okay. Some more fall under, assessments and grading. How do we do retakes? When do we do it? How do we track the progress? Some material and platforms and logistics. The digital platforms that we adopted, there's not a lot of understanding of how to use the span of them. However, the caveat to that is that was somewhat intentional. We didn't want them to have to learn both at one time. Those were just really there for those who wanted to dive deeper. Here's a little bit of the training, so that will be coming more.
We have some
for them.
teachers that use it every day and other teachers that,
Yeah.
and that goes with a lot of technology. Some teachers don't want to touch it, that's not kind of their jam, what they want to do. Other teachers are like, oh man, I'm doing this every single day, and kids are using it. And
Yeah, and then of course we have English learners who are struggling with the reading, and that's a problem. That's always a problem. Again, supporting modifications in small group with varied needs is time intensive when you have a new resource as well. And then parent understanding and expectations of what should come with a new resource. So how are kids doing so far? So this is a summary of some data that Tina's put together for us. And you can see it's 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. The 6th grade is where the very first bar is where we've landed in spring in 6th grade, right? So we landed at 66, they came back in at 62%, summer slide, very common. And then they grew to 69%. Now this I want to highlight because when you implement something new, because of the shift in the scope and sequence for students, the differences in students, the difference for teachers, you often see what we call an implementation dip. This was not only not a dip, it was growth from within this time frame. So that was a huge celebration. When you look at grades 7 and 8, you'll see that they declined a little bit, like 7th grade, not really very much. That's not that much of a point. Our goal really is, can we at least maintain, which would be a huge achievement when you're implementing. And growth, we're hoping still to do that growth. And then when you look at grade 8, they did have a bit of a dip. Again, not a huge dip, but when you think about 8th graders, they've had CPM for many years, and now they're shifting. They've had more of that. So it's a little bit of a bigger climb.
we still want to grow.
We do want to go. We're not settling, don't get me wrong. Okay, and then this is 9th algebra and 10th geometry. This is the pre-ACT, and you can see we are ways away from our goal, but all this does is help us to know that this is why we adopted this curriculum in the first place, is to help address some of these needs. Now, we don't have that data yet for the spring, so this is just what came in the fall.
Yeah, there's no mid-year data points.
No.
So, which makes it a little bit hard. So one of the things we also wanted to do is we wanted to see like how our students are feeling about themselves as mathematicians. So we call it like your math identity. What do you feel as yourself? Like, we have the questions, am I a math person? Others sees me as a math person. Do my teacher value my thoughts as a math person? We wanted to we did this first quarter. We want to see where the students are. So you want to go to the next slide. So if you look at this, basically, if to summarize the data in a nutshell, as kids get older, they don't see themselves as math people. And that's very typical, but we want to be aware of that, and that's what we want to adjust. We want to tackle that. Because if you look at the first line, I think, I'm a math person. At Silverbrook, almost 62%, 61.8% of our students see themselves as math people, and that's fantastic. Badger, 38.9. That's a huge drop. Then you get to high school, 31.7. Again, that's typical, but that's what we want to know and we want to see. And that's one of the reasons in this curriculum, it goes back to that building that math community is built into it. And we just want to be aware that this is how our students feel, and we want to somehow address that, and we want them to enjoy math. And we want everyone to see themselves as a math person, at least in some way. That's my goal.
Yeah, absolutely. We always laugh about the joke that people will say, well, I'm not a math person, but you would never say, I don't read.
Yeah.
You know, you wouldn't say, I'm not a reading person. I don't read that. So we want all
Letters
students to
aren't my
see
thing.
them. Yeah, I don't do letters. We want them all to be able to see themselves as people who can do math.
So yeah, this is, like I said, this is very typical, but this is something we want to make sure that we're addressing. We want this to get better. This is,
And they respond to instruction better if they see themselves as able to learn math. And of course, we did a teacher survey. This has not been given yet. It will be given on the 19th. You can kind of peruse some of the questions there. This was all part of our progress monitoring of implementation. So this will be going out, and we're just kind of measuring how their comfort level and also any feedback on what we're doing to support them, how do we need to adjust and tweak what we're doing. So next steps, we have upcoming coaching sessions still coming. We have PD days and lesson overview days coming. There's a student survey coming the middle of Q3 and at the end of the year. More teacher surveys, and we will continue progress monitoring. So that's what the rest of the year looks like. So thank you. That was long. I appreciate your patience.
Kelly
do you-
wanted it long. I kept saying, we were doing too much. No, it's longer, longer.
Yeah. Do you have any questions or comments or concerns?
Yeah, that's what I was just going to ask. Does anyone have questions or comments? But no, I mean, it was a very thorough report. It seems like it's going well, right? And it's kind of neat to see like what goes on behind the scenes because, you know, we don't always hear all of those details. So
The teachers
I
are putting
appreciate
a
it.
lot of work in.
Yes.
I just wanna make- They are working very, very hard.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I just want to commend the whole group for putting this presentation together because we don't often hear the progress that's being made on some of this stuff. But as what caught my ear about the presentation was how the teachers were really embedded into the learning and they had that time to touch, feel, try it. And really understand how they're going to teach it. And that's going to make everyone successful. So as long as they're taking advantage of the time that we're allowing to do those things, I'm all for it. And I think it's a great way to tackle it for everyone, teachers and students.
I have a friend in a different district who's implementing, and they're not having these days, and I'm telling her, she's so jealous. She's like, that is not fair.
Yeah. And it is not easy for teachers to be out of the classroom.
Yes.
They have to prepare sub-plans, and it's always like, oh, but they also are giving us, like, one of them told me today, like, oh, these are such good days. So it's valuable. Not easy, but valuable.
Good.
Okay. Anything else?
All right. Well, thank you so much for your
Thank you.
presentation. All right, so the next thing up for discussion tonight is the literacy implementation updates, and Adrienne Schneider, our curriculum program administrator, will be presenting this one.
All right, welcome. I promise you, this will not be as long as Kelly or Curtis. I'm hoping that
It won't be too long-winded.
I'm hoping that Karina and Aaron were not freaking out over there thinking, oh my gosh, ours is so short. No, but truly, we're excited to share. We're in two different places, at the elementary school and at Silverbrook, being at two different years with the implementation, both utilizing the same resource. But excited to bring, so Corrine Tice is the literacy specialist at Decorah, and Aaron Spaeth is over at Silverbrook. So I invited them here tonight to share the journey that they're taking on at their respective spaces. But just a little bit of background for you. So fifth grade is in year one of their implementation of Amplify CKLA, and K through 4 is in year 2. And if you remember back a couple of years, you've heard from different folks in CNI about Act 20, the literacy law, science of reading, many things associated with that, which pushed the elementary level to need to adopt a resource that aligned with the science of reading, which has really catapulted all of us to review what we're doing, and has been exciting, which part of the journey I'm on this year is with our 6th through 10th grade teachers, 6th through 12, but with 6th through 10th grade specifically for adoption for next year. And so just really, really looking at what we're doing with kids and how it's going to help get better readers so that they can say, I am a reader and I am a mathematician, and they can all feel really good about what they're doing. So tonight for you, we are going to share those implementation highlights, describe the role and the impact of coaching and PLCs, similar to what you heard earlier, provide an early look at student data. We are not going to be sharing specific like STAR data, things like that tonight, but just more anecdotal things that we're seeing early on right now, and then preview those next steps for continued implementation. All right, so I'll let Karina and Aaron both kind of take their respective parts here.
Okay. So at the K4 level, we're in our second year with CKLA, so we're seeing some of the same things that Silverbrook is seeing and some things that are a little different. So our teachers are definitely more confident in their teaching. Last year was very much just getting used to the materials, how it all works, how they can deliver it to students. And this year, you are seeing way different things in the classroom as far as like the teachers and their level of comfort with it. And with that, they are then able to focus on what the lesson is truly trying to teach our students. Where last year it was they were kind of fumbling through and like, yep, we got through that lesson, great. And now this year they're going in with a focus and more intentional with their teaching. So they might see that, okay, the big idea of the lesson today is main idea. Can kids identify main idea? So if they have that at the forefront of their teaching, they can really hone in and make sure students are understanding it, make sure that they are assessing students in that. And so that's a big shift this year for our teachers, and it's great to see them doing that. Which leads to like the next bullet point, which is we're focusing a lot more on the formative assessments, which is kind of the in the moment checks for understanding each day. And so how can teachers do that like within the day's lesson, you know, so that they're not taking all this extra time to give a test, like how can they quickly check which students are understanding and which ones might need more support. So then once they have that data, then they can go to the next thing on our list, which is the win time, which stands for what I need. And that's an extra 30 minutes at the elementary level where students are, in a sense, broken up into different groups. So some students might get intervention, pull out intervention from a reading specialist or a math specialist. But then within the classroom, the teachers are looking at that data to see, okay, which students might need a little reteaching from the CKLA lesson, or which students maybe are still lagging in skills from last year that they didn't quite grasp, then they can help with those students and reteach them during that time. So that's a big shift, and I guess an addition this year at the elementary level. And then again, that just goes with utilizing that data to inform their instruction. So again, a lot of focus on what the students are showing that they know and what they don't quite know yet. And then as far as our kids go, the students, we've noticed a big improvement in them retaining their skills. So what they learned last year as kindergartners, they kept, even with that summer big break, they kept it. And then even, we're on day 2 after winter break, they were saying the kids didn't lose it. They got it. Like some teachers were giving assessments today and those kids, they knew it. They didn't lose it with these little breaks we're having. So that's a huge improvement from what we've seen in past years. And then the other part is their background knowledge is increasing. So what that helps with is if students have a large background knowledge and more vocabulary, then their comprehension of reading is so much higher. Like not just what they're reading in the classroom, like they go pick up a book from the library, their background knowledge is growing, so then they can read and understand books in other contexts. So it's been really great this year.
And obviously at Silverbrook, we're at a different year of implementation being our first, but before we even talk about like where we are in our journey, I just want to kind of go back to last spring. So prior to us even kind of getting our hands on the materials, the district was very willing for us to go to some of the elementary sites to see CKLA in action. And I think that really springboarded our implementation. We were able to see fellow district employees using the materials. We kind of teamed up with Fair Park. We actually had a meeting with their teachers and we were able to ask questions about their implementation journey. So I think that really springboarded our whole start of everything. And a lot of what you just heard is kind of what we're seeing and where we are with our implementation. One thing that you won't hear that's on this PowerPoint, but we try to look at what positives we have in our current structure at Silverbrook. And the majority of our teachers are teaching a CKLA lesson more than once. So we really highlight the fact that we want to be reflective after every single lesson because different than a K4 teacher, we might be teaching that same lesson 3 times in one day. So we're hoping that that helps us continue to continue on our implementation journey, but almost expedite the process. So just a little backstory. But with that being said, you compare this week to the first week, our teachers are much more confident in teaching the CKLA. Like you heard with math implementation, it truly brings back even the most veteran teacher to those first year feelings because it's so different, it's new, but with challenges often comes a lot of opportunity, which is what I think you'll hear in this as well. We are also focusing on those formative assessments. We're putting a lot of value on if we think this is important, we're all doing it. So trying to create that consistency with that. Focusing on alignment with our pacing. And we often talk, we're not pacing to say that we're finishing the units in a certain amount of time that the district is saying. It's we're pacing so that we can continue to have those conversations together. If we have one teacher that's a whole unit ahead, we can't have those really valuable conversations in our planning meetings and our PLCs. So really pacing so that the team is always together. Focus on that collaborative planning, very similar to what Matt said. We really put an emphasis on those PLCs and planning times. And then identifying key lesson components. We're really trying to put a strong emphasis on that now. We've got the routines of the instruction or of the program down now. Now it's really, as a team, weekly, we sit down and try to look at it lesson by lesson. What is the most important? What do we really need to make sure that the kids are learning each and every day, and trying to keep that consistent between all of the 5th grade classrooms?
Okay. So some things that are working, being in year 2, we were able again to get our schedules across the board at all the elementaries with enough time built in for our CKLA lessons. And that's about 2 hours of a school day that our kids are doing that. So that was nice to see that consistently. All buildings were able to have that time. Different from the overall pacing of the lessons, it's the daily lesson pacing is so much better than it was last year. Last year, many teachers struggled to get through a lesson, or it took them 2 days, sometimes 3 days, depending on the classroom, where now, for the most part, they're finishing that lesson in that day. They are more focused and they're intentional with their teaching, so we're seeing that going very well. Data collection within the lesson. So again, more than just collecting data from like the Big STAR tests or the Ames Web Plus testing at the lower levels, they are trying to collect data like in the moment with their kids and like who's getting it, who's not. And then again, that focused win time, so they can hit those students that maybe aren't quite getting it, or ones that have it, trying to, challenge them and push them ahead as well. Our PLCs this year, whereas we had the structure in place last year's PLCs focused a lot on just problem solving and figuring out the curriculum and a lot of troubleshooting, where this year we can now truly focus on student data. So that's been a nice change, and teachers weren't quite ready for it last year, and this year they're like craving it, and they're like, but I see this kid needs this and this kid needs that. And I'm like, yes, we're there, we're getting there. So that's an awesome thing that's working. And then our students' stamina. So hearing Curtis and Kelly talk about the upper levels and that they're having difficulty with attempting those hard problems. We're seeing it already, starting in kindergarten. CKLA is a very rigorous program. It's really challenging for our students, and they're doing it. They're not just trying it, they're being successful with it, and their stamina is growing. I mean, when we first saw the program, when we visited other districts, we're like, wow, these kids in kindergarten, they're there for an hour to learn skills, and then they have another hour where they're getting all this knowledge and background information, and we're like, our kids, they're gonna struggle so much. And there was struggle last year, and this year, they're ready for it. They're like, okay, yeah, CKLA skills time, I got it. It's knowledge time, okay, and they can do it. It's really great to see.
And what's working in 5th grade, year 1 implementation, those formative assessments. One thing I didn't hit on that is the CKLA Amplify program actually provides options for those, and that's really a nice thing, because given one lesson, there might be 2 different formative assessments, maybe even more, that you could choose. So just having that option for measuring that and reacting to that data has been working. One thing that our teachers kind of vocalize is the students were very familiar with the CKLA Amplify materials, and that is worth a lot. So the readers, the student notebooks, the routines that they were using in 4th grade just carried on. Day 2 of school, it was as if they knew those materials. There wasn't that lag of, this is your reader and this is when we use it. So that really helped kind of move the learning ahead. The planning meetings, so we went through and still are, it's not perfect, but we went through a little bit of that clunkiness too of what is our PLCs, what do we really need to achieve in our PLCs? And like Kareem kind of said, we were at first really talking a lot about, well, we're problem solving what we're teaching the next couple of days. And while that's extremely important, we were finding that was kind of dominating our PLCs early on. So what we did, so that we had time in our PLCs to maintain looking at student data and all those other really essential components, we implemented weekly planning meetings so that we we kind of pulled that like problem solving of the lessons out of the PLC and dedicated our own time during our school day for that. And that really has helped kind of determine what is appropriate for the PLC and what is more for the planning, the nuts and bolts day-to-day teaching. And once we made that shift, it really helped our teachers. And probably one of the coolest things is the consistency between teachers. The 5th grade experience for literacy is very similar if from one classroom to the other.
You were so short on that explanation, I wasn't.
Yeah. You can almost walk in like
Yeah, you're right.
and hear like through a walkthrough like a teacher teaching this point, you go to the next classroom over and the teachers, and it's sounding a little bit, but it's the content is the same, the skills are the same, and there is a lot of value in that. The kids are all having the exact same literacy experience.
Great. So the impact of coaching is really critical, as you heard with math, and it's been just essential for a successful implementation for really for our students and for our teachers through this process. And I just can't say enough about the impact of the literacy specialists at our sites for this journey, because not only did they have to really have such a strong background knowledge in the science of reading and literacy instruction, but also the materials, the resources, the how do I do this. They had to be ahead, they have to be ahead of the teachers in their thinking, in their planning, and be troubleshooting. And so similar to math, there's been an expectation for coaching throughout the year with each teacher several times each year, and that looked a little bit different depending on which grade level you might be in. Some grade levels were planning together and having like a team goal initially, and then it branched off into a individual goal because I need something a little bit different than my colleague does. Can you help me with this? So it was somewhat of a personalized plan. But one of the key components is co-planning that lesson with those teachers to make sure they felt really confident in their delivery. Observing that instruction, providing the feedback has been really important too, so that they are seen as that partner in the work, that they're not evaluative. Another component last year in year 1 with the leadership team also was a part of walking through to make, just to check for what should this look like and how do we support this. And, as being a building leader during year 1, how to support teachers who were literally crying because there's just so much stress in implementation, and 2 months later, they're excited about what they've accomplished and to know that this will get better, and it does. And it's just it's just such a rewarding process to go through. The impact really has been that teacher confidence in the delivery because they're supported throughout the way. We're not going to throw them to the wolves and say, good luck, go for it. We need our kids to be successful. We need them to have confidence themselves in being readers. We need also CKLA, Amplify CKLA provides certain, throughout their PD structure and the resources that they have lots of supports within too. So the coaches can help make sure that there is that fidelity there so that, yes, when you walk into 5th grade classrooms, it doesn't matter which room you're walking into, those students are going to receive the same thing. Now, that doesn't mean that there isn't autonomy with teachers to give their craft and their, uniqueness to it, but there is a standard of expectation for what is going to be delivery for students. And so the coaches can help with that component as well. And then that instructional response to student data. So when you are looking at the data, the coaches can help pull that together and say, okay, so what are we going to do? What are those best instructional practices, those strategies that we're going to do? How, let's look at this data and, oh my gosh, your classroom was, knocking it out of the park with this. This one, not so much. What are we going to do about this? So helping to really facilitate those conversations is such a critical component for what these coaches have done throughout this process. The other part that you've heard all of them talk about tonight, including with math, is that professional learning community. And it's evolved. At Silverbrook, they were in a place, and They've been doing this already now at Silverbrook for a while in different capacities, so they were just ready to do it a little bit sooner with literacy, but really just planning with assessments in mind. What do we want the kids to know? And so how are we gonna plan for that? And what are we gonna do if they don't get it? What are we gonna do if they already have it? And so it's not just, I am opening my book and teaching bullet to bullet. Analyzing that student work, so not just taking it at face value. What does it look like? That tells us more. We need to look into that. And then calibrating those expectations across classrooms is really a huge component of PLCs, is having those dialogue. I think Curtis brought it up, of being vulnerable and open to each other, and the coaches can really help in that capacity too, as do the principals. When also the PLCs, as they've evolved with this implementation, some of the challenges are time. When you're implementing, there's just never seems to be enough time, but then as you refine your process and you talk to your colleagues and they're like, oh yeah, I've been able to do this, this, and this to be able to, secure that a little bit better. Huh, that's amazing. I would have never thought about that, because they don't get to see each other teach. And so it's only during that time that they can have those conversations to learn that from each other. So the result of that then is just that stronger shared understanding of standards and instruction, so that they can help students, which is the end goal, and then the increased collaboration.
So some of these things we kind of already addressed, the student impact that we're seeing from CKLA. The background knowledge in our students is definitely growing, and it's staying from year to year. So it's been really cool being in year 2. And you might see a little bit of this in 5th grade too. But like our 4th graders, if they're learning about a certain topic and it addresses something they learned in 3rd grade, the kids right away are like, oh, that's like the Roman unit that we learned about in 3rd grade, and it ties to what they're learning now. And they remember very specific things, like specific names of people, different events that happened. And so it's just really natural. We're not, drilling the kids and having them memorize things. It's just through the stories they read, the conversations they have, the activities they're doing within the lessons that are sticking with our students. So that's been awesome to see. Again, go ahead.
And the kids are super excited. When a teacher references something that they have prior learning about, it's not just a select couple of hands, it's every kid wants to share, like, I know something about this. So like that excitement and engagement, and it's really exciting to see.
And then again, that stamina, they have more stamina for learning, more stamina for reading, working through hard things. Our kindergartners, when they get stuck on a word, they're sitting there, they're sounding it out, and then they're successful blending all those sounds together, reading words, and just the smiles on their faces when they can do it and they push through and they are doing hard things. So hopefully over the years that'll continue up into our upper levels, especially, with both reading and math, that hopefully our kids are growing as whole people. And then, again, those skills from year to year, we're seeing that, again, stick with our kids, and then even what our students are able to do now as opposed to before, they're doing things much earlier on. So like our kindergartners are reading full texts by the time they finish kindergarten and moving into 1st grade. 1st grade, the amount of text on a page for these kids, it's a full page of words with, maybe a picture off to the side. So like what we're seeing in our students, we're seeing it sooner than we have in the past too. So that's a really big achievement.
Yeah. In addition to all of that, we're seeing an increase in just like general creativity and writing. We had a poetry unit, and the kids were excited, and they're producing poetry, but at a really high level, and they were using it as an outlet to express themselves. So just really that authentic writing. We've seen an increase in like just that evidence-based type thinking, where it's not just my idea as a 5th grader. CKLA Amplify kind of trains them into proving it by pulling evidence from the text. So we've seen an increase in that. And it's not up here, but just like the general vocabulary, they're being exposed to so many different levels of vocabulary and so many different new words, and using that in their conversations with their peers and their writing, that's something that we've seen as a really positive impact as well.
With the vocabulary, I was just thinking, some of our teachers have started like tallies, and when the kids are using them just naturally in the conversations throughout the day, they're tallying those words up, and the kids get so excited that they're using these big new vocabulary words. So it's little things like that that keep the engagement of our students as well. And again, their knowledge is just growing exponentially.
So key learnings, things that we know, the PLCs have been critical for sustaining change. The coaching has been essential for the strong implementation, and the implementation is improving with time and consistency and support. The next steps, we have continued learning sessions from Amplify throughout our PD days coming up. Continued literacy coaching at all grades. We have attention to differentiation and scaffolds to support the learners. So as we, have just the gamut of a learner in a classroom, how do we ensure that everybody is getting what they need during that core instructional time? Especially if there's, a full text story that is being read to the students and the teachers asking those questions. There's a variety of ways that the teacher can ask questions. And so how are they really attending to that so that students, they're gaining, able to gain how the students are comprehending the story that is being read and the knowledge that is there. And then just really attending to deepening the formative assessment practices within the PLC work. It's already at a great place. Leaps and bounds from where it was even just 2 years ago, but deepening those practices. And I think that is it. So I guess in the end, we were probably just about as long as math. So that's okay though. It's great things to be able to share with you. Wonderful things to be able to share. Are there questions or comments that you have for myself or Erin or Crean?
I just want to say that I can tell that you guys are so passionate about teaching literacy. And if your peers have half as much passion, I'm just thankful for all those kids. They're getting great teachers, so thank you.
Yeah, I'll just echo kind of what I said for the last one too. It's cool to hear from the teachers too that are actually in there and working with it, and hearing real stories from the classroom. And I'm excited that you guys seem excited and that everything seems to be going well with the implementation, and excited to see the progress moving forward. Thank you.
No, it's not really my time to share, but one thing, listening to
We're not
math
passionate at all.
implementation, I think there's some comfort and consistency. Like, these are two very different curriculums, but a lot of what they're doing for implementation, from what I've learned tonight, is very similar to what literacy is doing. So I think that there's comfort in that, right? Like, we're implementing kind of more standardized, and I think that that's a really good direction. From what I've heard, it's very similar, math and literacy. Different contents, but very similar process, so.
All right. Well, thank you so much for your presentation.
Thank you.
Okay, the next item we have up for discussion tonight is K-12 Music Curriculum Cycle Evaluate Update, and that will be presented by Kelly Downs.
So this is really just a piece of information for all of you. The music team, along with some other teams, were supposed to be here tonight to present. However, we needed a little bit more time. They're coming back in February. But there was a piece of information we did want to make sure was on everybody's horizons. Back in January, when we had a professional development day for the music team and all the teams around visioning, like, what will this look like once we reconfigure? One of the decisions that was made at that time is that when fifth grade goes back to the elementary school, they would focus on general music standards rather than on like the performance that they are currently doing. They will be in an elementary model that reflects the elementary model better. The teachers felt they could support it better. So I just wanted to make you aware that that shift is happening. So as you hear other things coming forward, you'll know what we're talking about. So do you have any questions on that?
No, it makes sense to have it aligned at the elementary level, and yeah, no, totally understand. All right, it looks looks like there's no other questions on that. So then the last item we have for discussion is instructional practices. And it looks like Kelly Downs will also be presenting this one.
So the goals of this presentation are really a service for the committee. We are going to be reviewing John Hattie and his research on student achievement because he's done a lot of work on what are the best instructional practices. So we want to look at his research. I want to establish a shared understanding of high impact instruction. This is so important because time is an enemy to teachers. There's so many things you can do, and our teachers are all doing good things, and we all are doing our best, but we have to shift from doing the good things to the best things because we want to maximize every minute of our instruction. And his understanding of some of this research helps us to make those choices. So I want to also show how this research informs our process and decisions. The past two presentations, you're going to hear echoing words coming through this, and you'll see why it's connected into what we're doing. And then I just want to develop your knowledge of educational research to support members in your role. You have that role of like having to look through curriculum and being thrown into education. So I just want to make sure that you have what you need to be able to respond, ask questions, vet, do as you need to do for the community. So who's John Hattie? We mentioned him once before. This name may sound familiar to you when we brought forth some of the partnership work with Elmbrook. He is an Emeritus Laureate Professor from Melbourne Graduate School of Education. Very internationally recognized. He's done 30 years of synthesizing education research. And that word synthesizing is really important. He's not the one doing the research. He's taking all the research that's been done out there, bringing it together and finding the trends and seeing what they say together. So he has done very in-depth studies on the research that's out there. He's put it all together in a series called Visible Learning, and we'll talk a little bit more about what that means in a minute. And again, that final point, he's drawing from millions of students and thousands of studies. So it's the largest evidence base in education research. So there's very many specific studies. He's bringing them all together to find these trends of not only what works, but what works best in education. So what is visible learning? That is taking learning and making it so that we can see the impact, whether it's students or teachers. When a teacher is doing a certain kind of instruction, I know and I can see that it's going to have a certain impact, and so students can also see their progress. So the core message is focusing on what works best based on evidence, not trends, not assumptions. Oftentimes we have a belief system that I know this works, I've done it for so many years, but how well does it work? And is it evidence-based, or is it just a belief I have? So we're trying to sort through all of our beliefs to, okay, what really does evidence show us? So he synthesized these studies, and now his updated research covers over 2,100 meta-analysis, so it's very in-depth. Our goal, again, is to help educators prioritize those high-impact practices that can accelerate learning. So the one caveat that he does come under some scrutiny from, there's always critics of everything, and that's great. It helps us be better. But it's not a magic wand. It's not like we can just pick this and do it. He provides in his book context around each one of these things of how it can be implemented. Like one piece I know is always controversial is, well, the lower class size isn't high on the effect size list. A lot of people are like, wait a minute, how can that be, right? But he talks about it within a certain context, within a certain application, and then it kind of makes more sense. So it's important that we don't just take these list items out of context and apply them, but we understand what he's saying about that item. So that's important. I do have the 250 influences there for your light reading if you want to scroll through that. I find it fascinating, but it's really interesting to see what they are. I'm going to just highlight a few for you. And again, we mentioned this once before, like I said, with the partnership with Brookfield, but what these effect sizes are. He talks about what he calls a hinge point, which is 0.4. That's all you need to know about it. But that represents 1 year's typical growth. Like that's what we're shooting for, at least 1 year. But, you know, we'd like more than that. We'd like 1.5 or a lot more. So anything that's listed above 0.4 accelerates learning beyond a year's growth. If it's around 0.4, that's about what we expect. And anything below it may be useful, but it's not as efficient, and some of them are actually harmful. So he kind of categorizes those on this barometer image. So I just wanted to pull out the top 10. So these are the top 10 that he's currently found of impacting students in a very strong way. The highest rated one is collective teacher efficacy. Now, that's a lot of big words. And what that's really just saying is that teachers work together, which hopefully echoing in your mind is all the collaboration we just talked about, the PLCs and all of that, with a shared belief that they can make a difference. That sounds a little strange, I'm sure, about like believing you can make a difference. But oftentimes, I mean, you can see data that like, well, in this demographic or that or whatever, it's tough to move. We have to believe we can move kids. And when they work together, they see that they can, and then that creates that momentum that we need. Self-reported grades, students being able to hand something in and know what they're going to get from it, like knowing how they're going to come out. Teacher estimates of achievement, I love this one. Kids will rise up to what we expect of them, right? So when we have a great estimate of what they can do, they oftentimes rise to that. The cognitive task analysis, that is simply being able to be aware of how you're thinking about something. What strategy am I using? How do I approach this? And making kids aware of what kind of thinking, we make it visible. Illustrative math does a lot of this. They will show like an example. This student thought through it this way. This student thought through it this way. And you can kind of see how they're thinking. That's what that's talking about. The response to intervention, 1.29, it's really high on the scale. That's our MLSS system, our multi-level systems of support. We'll reference that a little bit. That's a structure that we have within our district to be able to meet the needs of all learners. And doing that well has a very high impact. Piaget programs, that's, you can see, falls under student things. This is simply knowing the development of kids and where they are. And again, illustrative math brings this in because we move from concrete to pictorial to abstract in everything that we do. When we start with the abstract, that's not quite developmentally appropriate. We have to move through these systems. The jigsaw method is just a strategy. And conceptual change programs, we're going to talk a little bit more about that. Prior ability and strategy to integrate with prior knowledge. The one thing I want to point out on this list, most of these are all things that we can impact as educators. They're things we can do. There's nothing outside of our control here for the most part. But look at the lowest influences. When you look at these, depression, ADHD, boredom, mobility, which means kids are changing schools all the time, retention, suspension, television viewing, summer vacation, lack of sleep, bullying, a lot of these are things that are outside of our control. We can't control how much TV a student views at home, right? But the good news is we have those other influences where we can meet kids where they are and still grow them. So it provides a roadmap for evidence-based education. And obviously our goal is always to continue to improve curriculum, instruction, outcomes for all students. And I really mean all students, every single one of our kids, we need to improve outcomes for, always. And there is no arriving. We can always keep moving. So I want to show you how this impacts our work in curriculum. It is woven within our curriculum cycle to ensure that every step of the way we are interrelating with our high impact strategies. It informs our decisions regarding adoption of resources, which you may have seen with Amplify and also with illustrative math. And it informs decisions about those structures that I was referencing and the strategies that we use. So that elementary strategic group is that partnership with Elmbrook, the PLCs, instructional coaching, MLSS. The reason we do this is because they are high impact things. So I also want to just point out this little bit of a quote. The greatest influence on student achievement is what teachers do. We know this. But how well the systems support them in doing it effectively. A teacher can't do it all alone. Our system has to align around these structures so that they can be effective in the classroom. Because without those supports, they can't do it as well. So I want to show you how this shows up in those areas. In our curriculum cycle, when you look at all these 4 phases, in the evaluate phase, they're looking, what are we doing right now with our high impact strategies? What do we have, what don't we have? What do we need to put in? When we get to our second stage, which is revising for improvement or resource review, we're evaluating resources based on high impact strategies through that lens. When we're implementing, you just saw that tonight, that coaching, professional development about how to put them in place. And finally, when we're assessing and refining, we're looking at what our practices are, learning more about what else could we be doing, and identifying, future PD, that where else do we need to grow. So the main part of this is, if you notice, we've designed that curriculum process to be led by teachers. Again, that's part of building that collective efficacy, that they are working together around that shared knowledge and growing. When it shows up in resource selection, I'm not going to spend too much time here because you've heard quite a bit about that tonight. But notice that even just for illustrative math, it's hitting 4 of these things. The collective teacher efficacy with the unit planning, the cognitive task analysis, that's built within the resource itself. Again, I mentioned this earlier, the Piagetian programs, that concrete pictorial abstract. And the conceptual change, this is actually one of my favorite parts about the way math is taught now. It's taking an idea that a student has that might be mistaken. And I know in my day, it was the red pen, right? Like, you got it wrong, it's wrong. That's not how it's done to be able to really have deep learning. Instead, you're showing them a model and saying, what do you see here? Where is the incongruence? And walking them through it so that they see the contradictions in the learning in their own minds. So that's what this conceptual change is about, and illustrative math is designed with this in mind. So when they did right now, they are doing the ELA resource review. This is for 6th through 10th grade. They had to create a rubric about what are we looking for? How are we going to measure what our choice selections are? And these are some of the things I pulled straight from their rubric. And on the left, you can see their effect sizes. They're all very high effect sizes. So they're looking at things within their resources that are connected to high impact resource or high impact strategies. This is what I referred to earlier. You had seen this before, how we then can take these things in initiatives like the elementary strategic group. We know that small group is 0.47. That's above 0.4. That's nice. But when we layer them all together and some brain research, we've now taken a very positive structure and amplified its effects by taking these different strategies and putting them together. We talked about PLCs an awful lot. These are the 4 questions, and you can see when we're talking about what do we want them to learn, we're touching on teacher clarity. We have to know in every lesson what we want kids to get out of it. I like how Adrian referenced that before about, going from I teach bridges, I'm opening the lesson and just going through it, to working in a PLC, I know exactly what I need my kids to learn by the end, and I know how I'm measuring them to see if they do it, and I know what I'm going to do when they don't have it. That intentionality really increases the effects of our instruction. And you can see it's 1.57 for its impact. Instructional coaching. This is so important, and I think it's sometimes something people think is an extra, or it is like, well, they're not working directly with kids. This is so instrumental, as you heard tonight, with not only implementation, but maintaining programs. Human beings, that's just what we are, right? We may start off strong, but it's easy to kind of die off. The coaches keep them constantly growing. And again, you can see all the different effects that it touches when we do this, and they're all above 0.4. So it really takes Hattie's research and just embeds those practices within. And I mentioned MLSS before. So we have, I'm not going to get too in depth here, but this is the structure that we use. Now, there's all different ways of doing this, and we will be looking, I'm sure, at ours soon. But when we look at the different tiers, we do these different tiers because each one is using a different piece of Hattie's research to be able to reach all learners and amplify our effects. So the goal of this little presentation, as I said, was just to review that research on student achievement and help us establish that shared understanding. So when things are coming before you, you have an ear for what to listen to and what to ask questions about. And I also wanted to show you how our processes are built around a lot of this research. These aren't just pulled out of the sky. We are very evidence-based. And hopefully you feel a little more supported in your role. So thank you for all that time. Do you have questions, comments?
I don't really have any questions, but just wanted to thank you for sharing all that. It's always good to see all the science behind it too, you know, and why we do the things that we do, and so I think that's really, I appreciate that you shared that. Yeah.
You're welcome.
All right. Okay.
Thank
Well,
you.
thank you so much. It looks like we have reached the end of our meeting time here. So if there are no further questions, I will go ahead and close the meeting. It's 5:45 p.m. Thank you.